Over this past Lent season at Joy Community, we had a small group Bible study called 40 Days of Love. There were about 6 different groups, and each group had about 8 to 10 people in each group, and we were looking at how to increase our love for others. There were about 6 different topics that we covered. There was like making love a priority, being patient and kind, speaking in truth, forgiving others, not being selfish, and developing good habits. After we had completed the small group study, I asked my group, I said, which of these topics is the most difficult one for us to do? And almost to a T, everyone said to forgive others. I asked several of the other team leaders, and I asked if they asked the same question. They said they did, and the same question came up, to forgive others. I think it's a difficult thing for us to do, to forgive others. And you see, the subject of forgiveness is not always a fun subject. It usually is only talked about after someone's hurt you. Sometimes it hurts small. Sometimes it's life-changing. I want to tell you something. Forgiveness does not come naturally to anyone. Even the disciples, I love these guys. They're following Jesus, and Jesus would say, hey, go preach the good word. And they'd say, you got it. And they'd run out and do it. He'd say, why don't you go heal some people? They'd, yeah, no problem, we can do that. They'd run out and heal people. He'd say, go cast out demons. And they'd say, no problem, Chief, we're on it. Jesus says, go out and forgive those who hurt you. Crickets, that's their response. I love Peter. He did have a kind of a question, I think he was trying to show God up a little, or Jesus up a little bit. He said, well, how many times should I forgive someone? 7? And Jesus just smiled at him and says, try 70 times 7. It means as many times as is necessary to do that. Receiving forgiveness is a wonderful thing, but forgiving others is one of the hardest to be active in. As people, we tend to want to get even. We want to hurt the person back. We want revenge. And trust me, I have felt that way in my life. And I have suffered the issues that go along with that. The anger, the bitterness, the hatred, it tore me up. It affected my family. It affected my work. It affected my friendships with others. See, it was only when I was able to turn to forgiveness and finally forgive the person that my life really turned back to normal. See, through forgiveness, that event or that person no longer controls my emotions, my life, my well-being. One of my favorite authors is a guy named Pat Conroy. Anyone know Pat Conroy? Okay, we got one. And you probably know him. He wrote The Great Santini, which is a great movie. The Prince of Tides, another great movie and book, The Lords of Discipline. And I love his writing, but his books are all semi-autobiographical. And, most of them deal with his own family and the struggles that they had. See, Pat's father was a Marine fighter pilot, and he treated his family like part of his platoon. It was strictly a disciplinary relationship. They had to salute, they had to stand at attention, they had to be on time. He had no love in that relationship, and that really affected the family. He mistreated his mother. It was a terrible thing, and it made Pat very sad. So most of his books go through chronicling through other characters his life story and his family. In one of his later books, after I think he was probably in his 60s when he wrote this one, he wrote this sentence at the beginning of one of his chapters. It said, on the day I forgave my father, my life began. Wow. Holding back from forgiveness can do terrible things to us. Forgiveness can set us free. I want to tell you a quick story. I was in, Honduras in 2007 on a mission trip doing VBS. And the missionary that was there, we were serving, the first day that we were there, she came and gave us a speech about safety. And so she, in order to prove her point about how dangerous the area could be and to be on our guard, she told us about that she had been robbed, her apartment had been robbed of everything about 8 months earlier. I think that's a great story. Thank you for telling us. We're all scared to death now, okay? But then afterwards I started talking to her. She goes, hey, Kevin, would you like to meet the man that robbed my house? I said, well, sure. I said, you still talk to him? She goes, yeah. I said, okay. So we made arrangements for the next day to go meet this man. So she picked me up in the morning in her truck, and I jumped in. She goes, well, we have to buy cigarettes and breakfast before we go. And by the way, you're paying for it. I said, okay, I'll pay for it. My curiosity is I'm way up here on curiosity, so I'll pay for it. So she makes some phone calls. We go to a bodega, buy 2 cartons of cigarettes. We go to this house, and I come out with a 20-pound bag of breakfast burritos. Okay, so I put it in the truck and we go. We come into this large building, and it had razor wire on top, but really every building in Latin America has some sort of sharp object on top to keep people out. So I didn't think much about it. I said, "Is this where he works?" She goes, "Yeah, you can say that." So we got in the car, we went to the lobby, and I noticed it was a nice big lobby, and I noticed there were quite a few policemen in there with guns. Once again, I wasn't too put off yet because I've seen a lot of policemen with guns around in foreign countries. So she talked to the receptionist, and then someone else came over, grabbed us, unlocked the door for us. She walked in, I followed her. The door closed behind me, click. We're kind of in a dark hallway. We walk forward, and all of a sudden I walk into this huge room. I find myself in the middle of a Honduran prison. There are prisoners walking everywhere free. The doors to the prison, the cells were open along the walls. You could see hallways down the way, and there were cells down there, and they were all open, and all the prisoners were walking freely. And have anyone ever seen Nat Geo, the Gangland series on TV? You see these guys that have tattoos from their feet all the way to their head? These are these guys, okay? They got face tattoos, they got head tattoos, neck tattoos. And I was scared to death. I started looking around for a guard. There was not a guard to be found. So we're walking through there, the missionaries talking to some of the people as we walk by. They're nodding to her, saying hello. And then we start walking, and there was this larger guy standing in the middle of the room. We start walking towards him. We come up to him, and she starts talking to him. She goes, "Hey, Kevin, hand over the bag." So I give the bag to him. She goes, "Pull out the cigarettes, too." Well, this time I really did look for a guard because I do not know what the penalty is for smuggling cigarettes into a Honduran prison. So I'm reaching in my pockets, pulling out cigarettes. I actually had put some in my pants, pulled them out, gave them to him. And I said to her, "Is this the guy?" She goes, "No, this is the guy I pay off as much as I can to protect my friend." I said, "Wow." So we walked away from him. We started walking down a hallway. And as we walked there, and I saw there was a bench, there was a man sitting there. He was a smaller guy. He had not as many tattoos. And she pointed and said, "That's my friend Alonzo. That's the one that robbed me." Alonzo looked up and saw the missionary approaching, and he got a huge smile on his face and got up and gave her a big hug. She pulled out a couple packs of cigarettes, gave them to him, and she introduced me, and we sat down and talked. Alonzo told me that he was caught by the police just several days after he had robbed her apartment. Alonzo also told me that him and the missionary were friends before this happened, that he helped her in ministry once in a while. He was very sorry for what he had done, but his family needed the money, and as he described it, his small drug habit was an issue. I kind of laughed at that. But he had been sober since he had been in prison for the last 8 months, and the visits from the missionary and actually, she forgave him while she was there, and he turned his life over to God. See, I was amazed at this missionary. She had a choice to make. She could resent the man for everything that he had done to her. And I'll tell you, at first she told me she truly did. She was so angry, so upset. He had destroyed her safety net. She hated him for what he had done. It was eating her up inside. She said that she prayed a lot about it. And another choice came to her, to forgive him as God had forgiven her. And that's what she finally did. And don't get me wrong, she was still angry. She was a little upset, but the hate was gone, and she was no longer sick to her stomach in anger. See, there was freedom and forgiveness, not only for Alonzo, but for the missionary herself. And that freedom led to a relationship that led a man to God. You know, when you think about it, excuse me, allergies are driving me crazy. When you think about it, the only alternative to forgiveness is revenge. You know, the problem with revenge is that it can never bring satisfaction, never, because it cannot replace what was destroyed. There's an old Chinese proverb that says, "He who seeks revenge should dig 2 graves." Revenge not only harms the other person, it destroys the one seeking it. So in order to turn the lives around and to get past this, we have to go towards forgiveness. So I want to talk a little bit about what forgiveness is and what it isn't. Forgiveness does not mean to forgive and to forget, okay? Forgiveness does not release the person from responsibility for what they did. A cheating spouse, an abusive parent, a child who's been murdered, that's hard to forget. And we don't want the same thing to happen to us again, especially with the same person. So we don't have to forget what happened. We just have to give up the hard feelings and the hatred towards the person we are forgiving, but not to forget what happened. Forgiveness does not require us to resume a relationship with that person, okay? It can happen, it'll take time, and a lot of trust will have to be rebuilt. But it does not have to happen. I'm so glad for my missionary friend that she was able to rebuild a relationship. Now, she wasn't going to hand her apartment keys over to him anytime soon, but they were working towards that goal, and it's an admirable goal, but it does not have to happen. Forgiveness does not come quickly. It takes time, and it should take time. You know, forgiveness is a process, and every situation and personality is different. You have to make sure you mean it when you forgive someone. I'm going to tell you a great sign that you can tell that you're actually at forgiveness. If that person that you are forgiving, if you could actually pray a blessing on them, you can pray for them and not have any bad feelings, you're there. You're there. I've personally had to go through this with someone who really hurt me badly. It took me many years to get to that point, to where I could pray for them and pray for God to be in their lives and to bless them. And I do it to this day. I don't do it every day, but whenever I hear about that person or I talk to that person or I see that person, that's what I do. And you know what? It feels great, because the old feelings I used to have were terrible. They brought me down so much. You know, my favorite approach in the past to forgiveness has been this one. Over time, my hurt will go away, and forgiveness to the other person will just take care of itself. That never works, guys. It really doesn't. It might be a temporary fix. You might not think about it for a while, but if someone mentions that person's name or someone, you have to see that person, I guarantee it happened to me, those feelings came rushing right back, and I went right back into that depression and that anger. It's only when we truly forgive that those feelings go away and we can be healed. Forgiveness does not depend on someone asking for forgiveness or being sorry for what they did. Don't wait for it. You don't have to. You know what that does? That gives that person control over you. You need to be the one, you can work it out and you can forgive them. And once you release them, by forgiving them, they are no longer in control of you and your emotions. And that's true freedom and healing. You know, Paul in the Corinthians, he just says it simple like this: forgive as the Lord forgave you. Lastly, this is one of the toughest ones I think sometimes, is don't forget to forgive yourselves. You know, many of us have an issue with that. I've had issues with it in my past. Sometimes we have things in our past that have happened. Some things we're not proud of. Some things that are deep-seated that we hide. Things that we think that God cannot forgive. That's just totally wrong. You see, Jesus didn't humiliate himself by being flogged and beaten almost to death, wearing a crown of thorns, and suffer and die on a cross so he could forgive everybody else's sins in the world but yours. No, he did it for you too. There is actually nothing God cannot and will not forgive for you. I think we tend to be a little harder on ourselves sometimes than other people. I know I am sometimes. And when it comes to us, we tend to think more that we need to earn forgiveness than others. And once again, it's simply not true. We don't have to earn forgiveness. Jesus did it on the cross. Jesus loves you. God loves you so much, and he thinks about you all day long. He wants you to know that no matter what, you are forgiven, and he loves you. If you struggle with this, I want to read 2 Bible verses that have helped me get past those times when I struggle to forgive myself. First one is Romans 3:22-25. It says, "We are made right with God by placing our faith in Jesus Christ. And this is true for everyone who believes, no matter who you are. For everyone has sinned. We all fall short of God's glorious standard. Yet God, with undeserved kindness, declares that we are righteous. He did this through Jesus Christ when he